Today's video is on Exodus, still in the Exodus series. We've reached chapter 7. If you remember at the end of the last video, it says that Moses and Aaron did exactly as God commanded them. And they went into Pharaoh. And we get the age reference for Moses, 80 years old, and Aaron's 83 when they go into Pharaoh. But it's this next section, verses 8 to 13, I think it is, that I want to focus on. And we'll see here the rod is used, and we'll pick it up at verse 8. Then the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, when Pharaoh speaks to you, saying, show a miracle for yourselves, then you shall say to Aaron, take your rod and cast it before Pharaoh, and let it become a serpent. So Moses and Aaron went into Pharaoh, and they did so just as the Lord commanded. And Aaron cast down his rod before Pharaoh and before his servants, and it became a serpent. But Pharaoh also called the wise men and the sorcerers, so the magicians of Egypt, they also did in like manner with their enchantments. Some translations have secret arts, but here we see that Satan inspired these wise men. Verse 12, so every man threw down his rod, and they became serpents, but Aaron's rod swallowed up their rods, and Pharaoh's heart grew hard, and he did not heed or listen to him as the Lord had said. And there's really three things I want to pick out from this section of Exodus chapter 7. First of all, God confirms his messengers with power. When God, verse 8, said to Moses and Aaron, go to Pharaoh, we know that God actually knew what Pharaoh was going to say, show a miracle for yourselves. And of course God had equipped Moses and Aaron with the rod and told him to throw it before Pharaoh, and it would become a serpent or a snake. And so God had equipped Moses and Aaron for the very task they had to do. And that is the first point. When God calls us to do difficult things, and he does, he also equips us with the things that we have to use, and so we're empowered by God for the calling and task that we're asked for. The second thing was that when they did cast down the rod, verse 10, Aaron cast down his rod before Pharaoh and before his servants, and it became a serpent. We see then that Pharaoh called the wise men and the sorcerers and the magicians, and they imitated what Aaron had done. And so here we see the enemy can imitate, but it cannot defeat. We notice that at the end of verse 12, Aaron's rod swallowed up their rods. And so God's power and authority always prevails. And of course, when we come into the New Testament, remember 2 Timothy chapter 3, it speaks about Jannes and Jambres and how they withstood or opposed Moses. And these may well be the group of the magicians that are mentioned here in Exodus chapter 7. And the last one is a hardened heart resists God despite the evidence. Verse 13, Pharaoh's heart grew hard, and he did not listen to them, just as the Lord has said. And of course this then leads us, we're not dealing with verse 14, but that becomes the first plague. And the first plague is the river Nile being turned into blood. Psalm 95 verse 8 says, harden not your heart, following the example of Pharaoh. Here we see that miracles alone do not change hearts. What is needed is obedience and humility. And so we see the courage of Moses and Aaron. They go into Pharaoh, verse 10. They obey God, just as the law commanded, verse 10. But we see these three things. Firstly, God confirms his messengers with power. He equipped Moses and Aaron with the miracle to give the evidence. Second, we see the enemy can imitate God, but they can't defeat. Aaron's rods swallowed up their rods. And lastly, we see a hardened heart resist God despite the evidence. And of course that was to lead to the first of 10 plagues which start in this chapter. Thank you for listening.